Welcome to our July meeting of the School Curriculum Assessment and Accountability Council. Thank you all for joining us today on this July morning. I would like to remind you that the goal and the intent of SCAAC is to study, review, and make recommendations concerning Kentucky's system of setting academic standards, assessing learning, identifying academic competencies, and deficiencies of individual students, holding schools accountable for learning and assisting schools to improve their performance, as well as advising the Kentucky Board of Education and Legislative Research Commission on issues related to the development and communication of the academic expectations and core content for assessment, the development and implementation of the statewide assessment and accountability program, recognition of high-performing schools, imposition of sanctions, and assistance for schools to improve their performance. At this time, I will turn it over for a roll call of our members.
Before I call roll, I'd like to provide some information for members about conducting meetings in a virtual setting. This virtual meeting must comply with the requirements of the Open Meetings Act. The public may view the meeting via the link provided in the public agenda, which is posted to the KDU website. SCAAC members must ensure that their video is streaming and they can be seen throughout the duration of the meeting. Additionally, all discussions must be broadcast to the public. Each time you do speak during the meeting, please unmute your mic, state your name, and take a short pause. This will allow the software time to recognize you. For agenda items that require a formal vote, we will conduct a roll call to record the vote of each member. Please silence or turn off other electronic devices that may cause disruption to your sound feed. And minutes will be taken and shared with the general public on the KDU website when available. Now I will call roll. Members, when I call your name, please make sure your camera and mic are on and state your full name and then indicate that you are present. We need 9 members for quorum. Carrie Ballinger.
Present.
Martha Emmons.
Present.
Chuck Fletcher. Thank you. Janet Beth Francis. Frank Hall. Leslie Jeffries.
Leslie Jeffries, present.
Thank you. Nicola Mason. Brenda McGowan.
Brenda McGowan, present.
Thank you. And our new member to SCAAC, Jennifer Pusatiri. Is that correct?
That's it. Jennifer Pusatiri, present.
Thank you so much. Allison Tammy. Josh Trosper. Robert Tuck.
Robert Tuck, present.
Thank you. Sarah Williams.
Sarah Williams, present.
Thank you. Alan Young.
I'm just here. I got involved in a traffic jam that I didn't anticipate behind construction crews, so apologies.
Well, we're glad you're here. We've had quite a bit of a morning ourselves with a fire alarm in Sauer, so it just seems like that's the tone of today. But thank you so much for joining. And Rosemary Young?
Rosa Young, present.
Thank you so much. It does seem like we have quorum.
Okay, wonderful. I'm glad we have a quorum on this July morning. At this time, we need to review our agenda and approve minutes from our March 2026 meeting. You should have had those sent to you prior to our meeting, and I'll give you just a moment to look over those, and then we will need a motion to approve our minutes from March 2026. Do I have a motion to approve those minutes?
I'll make the motion, Rosie Young.
Okay, we have a first. Is there a second?
I believe that's Chuck Fletcher speaking. There's a bit of a sound distortion to your mic.
Okay, do we have a first and a second by Chuck Fletcher? All those in favor, please signify by giving a thumbs up or saying aye.
Aye.
I,
Aye.
Okay, at this time, we will turn it over to Commissioner Fletcher to bring our greetings.
Thank you, Chair Ballinger, and it's good to see everyone today. Again, as always, thank you so much for your service as part of this group. I always look forward to it. It's a great agenda for today. I'm looking forward to hearing some of the reviews and hearing it for the second or maybe third time so far with as far as some of the discussions we've had. But again, I hope each of you had an opportunity to take some time with family this summer and enjoy a little bit of a break. I've always looked at as June as the wind down of a school year and July as revving back up. So we're hard to believe, but we're 3 weeks into July, and before you know it, many of us will be having our first days of school, our trainings and things of that nature. So looking forward to that. I'm not going to belabor too much. Just want to say thank you and welcome to the meeting because we do have a packed agenda today and I'm looking forward to it. So thank you again for your service and look forward to the discussions that are about to come. I turn it back over to you, Chair Ballinger.
All right, thank you, Commissioner. First on our agenda today, we have an update from the KBE High School Transformation Work Group. And I would like to ask Galiptis Grader Jones, the Director of Education Policy in the Office of the Commissioner, for our first presentation. So welcome.
Thank you. Good morning. My name is Galiptis Grader Jones. Glad to be here back with this group to provide an update on the KBE High School Transformation Work Group. As I shared previously, and I don't recall the date, but I think the work group still had one more meeting scheduled. So I'm here now to bring an update on the series of 4 meetings that our Kentucky High School Transformation Work Group has engaged over the past academic year, effectively 2025 to 26. As a reminder, the National Association of State Boards of Education invited the Kentucky Board of Education to participate in their high school Transformation State Network. Kentucky was one of 6 states invited into that network, which was really designed to help support the board's learning and awareness related to issues that may affect high school transformation and the high school student experience. I'm not seeing slides, so I just want to make sure that everyone on the team here is able to see those slides, but I will keep marching forward. Just confirming.
Yes, we can see them.
Okay, perfect. The High School Transformation Work Group in their final work group meeting identified 5 pressing issues related to high school transformation. And I'll share briefly a little bit about the conversations that the work group had specifically around these 5 pressing issues. As you may imagine, there were many issues identified from our Kentucky United We Learn Council that were shared over to the work group for consideration, and then the transformation work group distilled those a series of pressing issues and policy considerations. They distilled those down into 5. Those 5 pressing issues were disrupting the status quo. And some of the conversation that the work group engaged here were ways to think about ways to support districts and thinking about innovation and how to support innovation more effectively. And so some of the conversation considered how ways to think about creating frameworks and models and then sharing out those resources to districts, perhaps via something like an innovation playbook. Some of the conversation also related here about thinking about mastery and performance-based credits and ways to promote that opportunity so that they are more widely available. Another issue that was identified by the work group was related to equitable access and funding and ways to think about removing barriers for students who may be wishing to seek advanced coursework, ways to think about increasing employer and local involvement to help prepare students entering the local workforce. Again, specific ways to think about elevating spotlight districts that are already engaging in this work effectively, and ways to promote that out for more statewide awareness. And additional conversations related here, thinking about dual credit options and ways to help decrease financial strain on families. Related to the trust was also identified by the work group as a pressing issue. And the conversation here related to thinking about how to open up discussions about high school innovation models to students, teachers, and communities. And I believe this group is familiar with our efforts related to local accountability. And so thinking about how we continue to open up those conversations with our school district communities as well as our local communities. Trust also focused the conversation and ideas thinking about how to increase credibility related to local accountability. And other possible avenues here, we're thinking about empathy interviews with students and recent graduates to better understand their lived experiences and think about recommendations that align with some of those recommendations, those findings, excuse me. The vibrant learning system was identified as the fourth pressing issue. And this was thinking about the importance of student agency, experiences, and interdisciplinary learning as part of the overall learning experience. Conversation also related to balancing the use of technology in the classroom as an effective and efficient tool with innovative purpose. And another conversation thread related to the vibrant learning systems, elevating high school transcripts, and thinking about exploring new transcript models. And then the last issue, pressing issue that was identified related to teacher training, certification, and development. And this was a conversation related to finding further flexibility in the certification processes and options to address teacher shortages, particularly in our hard to fill content areas. In partnership with a variety of stakeholder groups. So these series of 5 pressing issues were identified in that final work group meeting. And then the work group then opted to share those recommendations with our Kentucky United We Learn Council. They will meet on Friday to consider these recommendations further. And I'll turn now to Commissioner Fletcher.
Thank you, Dr. Jones. Just a quick comment, and these pressing issues are not in silos. Sometimes they cross over. For example, one of the things that we've noticed, and even as a former superintendent, there's so many flexibilities that are in statute, but we don't have a lot of districts that are taking advantage of those. And so when we talk about pushing beyond the status quo, for example, in graduation credits, many of our high schools, including Lawrence County, when I was there, we had English 1, English 2, English 3, English 4, whereas in our graduation requirements, you can change English 3 and English 4 to be something that matches along with the student's ILP. Now, that could be because of equitable access and funding issues, but that could also be, it also overlaps with the building a system around vibrant learning and making sure that, and it even could be a teacher training and certification issue. So again, just because we've listed these in 5 different pressing issues, they overlap, I'm sure in many cases, but how can we help districts to push beyond the status quo, whether it be in looking at funding, and sometimes it may even be trust. How do we make sure that our school systems, our districts, the people within our district trust us to try something a little different? So again, we were looking at some issues as it went through, a lot of great input from different groups. And again, I think that we've come up with 5 solid areas of looking at pressing issues as we move forward. Again, not any, as far as, do we recommend that a district changes their graduation requirements? Not necessarily. That's up to the district. We want them to have every opportunity to meet the needs of their community and most importantly, their students. Again, it was great work. I do appreciate Dr. Jones, her work behind the scenes on this too. She helped organize us. She also helped to capture all of our thoughts and even at times herd us into some areas too. So thank you to Dr. Jones for all of her work. We really appreciate that.
Thanks for those kind words. I do want to emphasize these were the work group surfaced these ideas and these issues, and they will continue to be discussed via various stakeholder groups. There are no formal recommendations being presented at this time. But I'm happy to answer any questions, and just want to note that on this Friday, just a few days from now, those 5 pressing issues will be shared shared over to our Kentucky United We Learn Council for their engagement and consideration. Happy to answer any questions if there are any.
Thank you,
Yes.
Dr. Jones. It looks like we have a question from Alan.
Yeah, first of all, thanks for all the great work on this. Of course, how we do school has been the same for how long? So to push forward is to change kind of paradigms and archetypes. And so I applaud you on all the work in that regard. One of the things I think it makes it really hard is the notion of counting credits as courses versus as competencies. And I didn't know how much that may have been at the core of some of your talk about how you might be freed up to rearrange things differently if we had more of a competency-based approach versus a more course-based, which is not roughly now anymore Carnegie seat time unit things anymore, but that seems to be the crux of a lot of how we give trust to give a credit that a person has something. And I just didn't know if there was a competency based way forward or hybrid that would be part of the possibilities.
Yes, thank you for that question. And yes, that sentiment and that question right there, that performance-based credit, as you noted, the Carnegie credit model was very much at the heart of some of the conversation, both thinking about the status quo and ways to push on the status quo, and thinking about districts that are currently exploring that option, and any findings and input they may be able to share forward to help districts who are also considering that. Continuing engagement with performance-based credit. And I'll also note that that's very much also at part of the conversation related to our work related to local accountability more broadly. I'll turn to Dr. Fletcher if he wants to add anything further there. But part of this question is thinking about what districts are already thinking about this work, and then how we may be able to share forward if districts are encountering any challenges, or what their recommendations may be to help others start thinking about this more broadly.
Alan, that was the heart of many of our conversations, was how can we do performance-based credits? And we're allowed to. That's a part of, I mean, we have districts that do this probably probably more with virtual learning, their performance-based credits if they pass, things of that nature. But really think outside the box. But even including some of the conversations that went along with that, looked at how do we need to reimagine the high school transcript. So there's a lot of side conversations that are directly connected to that type of thinking of how can we award credit outside of just the simple Carnegie unit that we're used to for classes and courses. We have so many districts that are looking into work like this and maybe doing a little bit of work, like changing what their high school graduation requirements look like. So again, how can we set them free and give them the support and also to the trust of allowing those type of things to happen. So again, another pressing issue, and that concept was at the center of many conversations.
Do we have any other questions for Dr. Jones?
I have one, and I'm going to speak from the perspective of higher ed, because that's who I'm representative. And I'm all for the discussion. I think high schools need a shakeup, but I also want to make sure that we include higher ed, because we are the ones who want those credit hours. So we need to be involved in a discussion of what that might look like, so we can change what we do also.
Thank you for that recommendation. That recommendation was also shared by the work group as part of next step consideration. It's thinking about convening a post-workforce group, if you will, or at least engaging in discussion with our higher education partners, a variety of stakeholder partners, CPE. So the recognition that this is an ongoing discussion and conversation that really needs to pull in a variety of stakeholders. So appreciate that recommendation here as well.
Do we have any other questions for Dr. Jones before we move on in our agenda?
Just close with thanks for the opportunity to share an update here, and happy to answer any questions if you all have any after the meeting. So thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Jones. And it looks like I skipped right over revised Kentucky academic standards for technology. So if we could back up just a little bit and hit that with, we'll have Marty Park, our Chief Digital Officer in the Office of Educational Technology, and Laura Raganos, the Digital Learning Coach, also in the Office of Educational Technology, do this presentation. Thank you, and I apologize. I certainly didn't mean to jump right over you.
Oh, thank you so much, Chair Ballinger, and thank you, SCAAC members, for the opportunity to be with you today. We didn't take it personally that we skipped. That's okay. It kind of gave us a little more prep time from the fire drill run up the steps scenario this morning. Thank you again. We're great to be with you today. It was just 6 years ago when we were with you reviewing the academic standards for technology at that point, and we've hit that revision cycle. So we're excited to share with you today. I'll just open up and then turn it over to Laura, who is awesome and who has led our writing and revision team through the process for the academic standards for technology. I will be with you over the next several months, hopefully, because we have a revision process for our Kentucky Academic Standards for Technology, our Academic Standards for Library Media, and our Academic Standards for Computer Science, all coming through in a timely fashion. So we're excited to share all those with you. I think that the Academic Standards for Technology are critically important right now, and again, very timely as we're having additional conversations about high quality screen use. And so we're using the opportunity right now to really work with folks to better understand how we envision using technologies to learn. And that's certainly important. They're captured in our academic standards. I will mention the process has been followed just as we follow our other academic standards revision work across the agency and across the state. And so that's produced really great work that you'll get to see. And then also the connection with our minimum graduation requirements is important. So we do have a demonstrated requirement, demonstrate competencies in technology as tied to a minimum graduation requirement. And where we do not define those demonstrations, we give models and examples that have been helpful, but we do define those competencies, and those competencies are tied to these academic standards. And so certainly we can look at this set of academic standards as required for our high school students, as our high school students work through our process, but our standards capture K through 12. And so there's options all along the way. Now we see best practice to not wait until high school to work on these academic standards. And so we build those through grade bands, as you'll see in the revision. So Laura, please, love for you to take over and share and work with our SCAAC members on our revision process.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. I'm Laura Raganos. I have the honor of getting to work with the digital learning coaches across the state of Kentucky, and also to lead some of the work around the writing of the technology standards. If you can click to the next slide would be great, please. You'll see that, and as Marty mentioned, we have the regulation that is written around the technology standards. As he mentioned, we have the demonstration that is connected to the minimum graduation requirements. And as most of us know, we could wait until high school to try to meet some of these standards. But as he also said, they're scaffolded And just like we do with all of our other content areas, we scaffold those as well. We don't wait to high school to start teaching students how to write. So we definitely wouldn't want to wait until high school to start having our students demonstrate with the use of technology. So those are scaffolded, but basically the requirement then is seen heavily in that minimum graduation requirement. Next slide, please. I'm also not going to read the entire timeline and all that is mentioned on each of these slides. You all are well educated and can do that. However, I do just want to mention that the timeline, the process follows exactly the way all the other standards are written for the state. So you'll see a very similar process, and a lot of the feedback and demonstrators are reflected just like in the technology standards as they are in the reading, writing, math, science, social studies, all the other content areas. Next slide, please. As we're going through those, I want to mention that our writing team was extremely intentional about aligning our technology standards 6 years ago with all the other content areas. And our writing team physically and literally laid out all of the other standards, writing, the reading, the math, the science, all the content areas, and said, hey, can these be embedded within all of these other content areas? And if they were not well written, then we went back and revised. So what does that mean? Like, how do you embed those? So there's a slight difference in our technology standards. Our technology standards are student demonstrators rather than a teacher standard. That takes a second for our teachers to wrap their head around because they're accustomed to looking at their content area standards and saying, hey, I met that standard in my lesson plan today when I taught this unit on the Pythagorean theorem, or whenever I had my lesson on Shakespeare, I met that standard. However, our technology standards say, hey, when you taught that standard on the Pythagorean theorem, what did you ask your students to do to demonstrate that they understood that lesson that you taught? And if they use technology, did that demonstrator align with our technology standards? And so they were really intentional to make sure, as they looked at grade bands and they looked at the content areas, that they could easily be embedded so that teachers could seamlessly and smoothly use those standards for students to demonstrate their understanding and then scaffold it. Next slide, please. So we obviously organize these like many others do, other standards. So you've got your grade band, your concept, the standards, learning priorities and performance indicators that are similar to all other standards. Next slide, please. And then there's the overview. You're going to see this again is very similar to all the other content areas. It's really fine print, so I'm going to try to read that. Not that I need my readers or anything, but that is really tiny print. Next slide, please. So then we had our feedback as well, as all the other standards do. So we sent our standards out for review and feedback from the public. And so you can see there that I had an overwhelming response from a variety of people, experiences. Next slide, please. And also what the comments and results were. Again, overwhelming. People love the standards, 99% approval. I mean, you can't get better than that, right? And so then you'll see some of the comments as well. But I think one of the things that I want to really highlight here is that based on the feedback, the pieces that that we saw our writing team make adjustments with or to the standards were the inclusion of some artificial intelligence. And so you're going to see AI embedded in the new standards, whereas you did not see that before. They cleaned up a little bit of the language based on some of the updates to the other standards because again, they took out the other content areas and wanted to make sure those were aligned and followed any updates to the other standards and met those as well. I think one of the final pieces that I want to point out with you all today is that as you look at the concept areas of our technology standards, empowered learner, digital citizen, creative communicator, knowledge constructor, as you look at these concepts, you should start to see and hear some similarities in our Portrait of a Learner guidance that we provide to districts. And so working with the digital learning coaches in districts, many of them lead that charge for the Portrait of a Learner, Profile of a Graduate, whatever the district has named theirs. But then you start to see those empowered learners or the citizen or the communicator and the collaborator. And so as they're developing their portrait, they're like, oh, these are great, but how do our students do that? How do they demonstrate that they have met those? So I hope you just picked up on the how, which I mentioned earlier with the technology standards. Those are the how they're demonstrating their understanding of these other content areas. And so many districts have leveraged our technology standards to meet their Portrait of a Learner requirements. And use those standards then as those indicators that they've met in the proof of being an empowered learner or being a citizen or a communicator or collaborator. So they can look at the indicators within the technology standards and utilize that student work as their demonstrations. And that's a lot of information in a really fast presentation, but I would like to open it up for any questions that you all have for the technology standards. And we also did include a little bit of screen use because I know that that is a hot topic. However, I want to just point out one really quick difference in what you might be hearing versus what we would like to push on. You hear the use of screen time versus the screen use. And I would dare say that any of us on this call can master something in the same amount of time. And so I would like to remove that word of time and say, how are we using screens rather than how much time are you spending on the screens? And is it effective and efficient? And if it's not, then maybe that teacher needs a little refresher course and might be able to utilize a digital learning coach to help them coach through, work through some of those processes of using the technology effectively and efficiently with the students. Marty, did you have something else to say?
Yeah, well, just to wrap up, we did include as a resource just some thoughts. What we've been encouraged that folks are interested right now to talk about high quality screen use. That is a great conversation to get into, and these academic standards, perfect timing again in revision to enter into deep conversations about what high quality screen use is and should be. And again, we're focused on quality over quantity. And so that's super important for us. You see that. I think the last two times I was with this council, we talked about artificial intelligence in a good bit. And we've also talked about our digital learning guidelines, and all these pieces kind of fit together and kind of you see them through these academic standards. So we wanted to provide a couple additional resources. We are within the next week, hopefully week and a half, producing and will publish a screen use guide that we're excited about. We think it can be very helpful, really, as story starters, conversation starters for anyone interested in that conversation. And it is very, very much tied to the Kentucky Academic Standards for Technology. So Chair Ballinger, thank you so much. And SCAAC members for your time. Any questions that you might have that we can answer?
Does anyone have any questions for our technology department?
I would just like to say thank you for the work on this. It sounds wonderful. And I especially like the coherence of working with other areas and making it more seamless across content areas, because that is really something that needs to be done.
Absolutely, I agree.
Thank you both for your time this morning.
Thank you.
Moving on our agenda, we have our Read to Succeed update. I would like to welcome Nikki Ray Marinelli, the Chief Academic Officer in the Office of Teaching and Learning, and Christy Biggerstaff, all in the Director of Early Literacy, also in the Office of Teaching and Learning. So welcome to you both.
Thank you so much. Good morning, and thank you for the opportunity to be here today. I so appreciate the chance to provide an update on Kentucky's Read to Succeed initiatives. My name is Christy Biggerstaff, and like Ms. Carey said, I'm the Director of Early Literacy for the Office of Teaching and Learning. Unfortunately, despite what it says on the title slide there, Mickey will not be able to present with me today. I'm sorry about that. I know she's a much bigger draw than myself, but I will definitely try to do my very best. But during the next few minutes, I want to show you how Kentucky has moved beyond simply incorporating this literacy legislation, but building an aligned statewide system that supports educators from the classroom to the district level. And I'll highlight some of the investments that's been made, the evidence that those investments are producing measurable results, and where we're headed next. So I'm going to try to advance my slide. Did it go to the next slide? Am I good? Okay, good deal. So the first thing I get to start out with is something very exciting. And this is a national picture because it provides important context. While many of the states continue to recover from the pandemic related to learning loss, Kentucky has emerged as one of the top performing states for reading recovery. Independent researchers has identified Kentucky as 5th nationally in reading recovery. And even more importantly, they noted that states are making gains. They're implementing comprehensive science of reading reforms, just like Kentucky is doing and what we're talking about this morning. So that tells us the progress is not accidental. It reflects years of coordinated policy, professional learning, instructional improvement, and implementation support. So very exciting news to share with you this morning. On the screen, you can see there is what we call our Read to Succeed umbrella. And it's really, Read to Succeed is really much more than a single initiative. This umbrella encompasses our statewide system. Policy kind of establishes the expectations, but professional learning that you see there on the left-hand part of your screen really helps to build educator knowledge. Coaching helps teachers translate that learning into classroom practice. Leadership networks strengthen those district systems. Assessments identify student needs. Resources support the implementation every step of the way. And each component you see there on your screen reinforces the others because sustainable improvement requires coherence rather than isolated programs. So I'm going to give you some updates about several of the items that you see on the screen this morning, starting with our professional learning, which is we started with letters. So today, every one of Kentucky's 171 school districts have access to one or more of the Read to Succeed supports. The General Assembly's investments allowed us to provide evidence-based professional learning, literacy coaching, leadership development, and technical assistance, and gather some statewide resources that we get to share. So rather than concentrating support in only one or few locations, we're trying to build statewide capacity so that every district has opportunities to strengthen their literacy instruction. So one of the largest investments there you see on the screen are the Kentucky Reading Academies. So well over 7,000 educators and administrators have participated in letters. Participants begin with an average knowledge score of 65% with a pretest and finish the full course averaging around 95%. So that's a substantial increase in educator knowledge. However, knowledge alone is not our goal. Participants consistently report increased confidence, stronger classroom implementation, greater use of high-quality instructional resources, and those educator changes are what ultimately lead to improved student outcome, and that's what we're all about. We currently have around 1,000 educators signed up for cohort 5, so we'll have several more to join us, and that registration is not closing until the end of August, so I'm hoping even more will join us on our letters journey. And just to give you some information and updates about some of the findings we have found along the way in terms of the professional learning. So the Kentucky Reading Research Center has analyzed data from hundreds of elementary schools across the Commonwealth, and their findings demonstrate that schools with greater participation in letters saw stronger growth in reading proficiency and larger reductions in novice performance. That is so important because it connects the educator learning with measurable student outcomes. So we're no longer asking whether educators, enjoy the professional learning or learn something, but we're asking whether students benefited, and the evidence indicates that they did. Also, some more data and information. The comparison provides another way to kind of look at the same questions. Schools with above average numbers of letters trained teachers consistently outperform schools with lower participation. The largest differences appear in the percentages of students reaching proficiency. While many factors influence achievement, these findings strengthen the evidence that building educator expertise contributes to stronger performance. And again, around student subgroups, I find especially encouraging is that these gains are not limited to one group of students. We see positive trends among economically disadvantaged students, English learners, African American students, and Hispanic students. So across all of these groups, higher levels of educator training are associated with lower novice rates, higher proficiency rates. And that means this investment is helping improve outcomes for students with diverse learning needs. Then one last screen around letters. So ICF also conducted an independent evaluation and found some significantly, statistically significant, that's a big mouth word, big words this morning, among students who experience consecutive years of instruction from letters trained teachers. Students with disabilities also demonstrated meaningful improvements after sustained exposure to trained educators. So these findings reinforce the lasting implementation over multiple years, and that produces stronger outcomes than just a one-time professional development. This is a heavy lift. Letters is not an easy professional learning to be involved with. It is 2 years for the educator course. So to see that these findings are coming out, that it is impacting our students in Kentucky is definitely encouraging for all of us in the Office of Teaching and Learning. I do want to talk about some more professional learning that we are going to be offering under the kind of umbrella of the Kentucky Reading Academies. So as we look toward the future, we recognize that just one professional learning option would not meet the need of every educator. So while letters remains the gold standard in the science of reading PL, we also wanted to provide additional high quality, evidence-based options that are flexible, more accessible to our educators and administrators in our state. So that led us to partner with the AIM Institute to bring multiple science of reading pathways to our educators. So these pathways address the needs of classroom teachers, literacy leaders, secondary educators, practitioners, EL specialists, educators seeking additional knowledge around dyslexia. So you can see we've got several courses that we're going to be able to offer. They also position Kentucky well for implementation of House Bill 253 that recently passed and provided multiple KDE approved pathways that meet the professional learning requirements established in law. So the pathway to proficient reading that you see at the very top of your screen, along with a leadership course, will meet this law requirement and give educators flexibility while maintaining the same high expectations for quality. The other courses that you see on your screen will be offered to educators to extend their learning on a voluntary basis, just as if they would like to be involved with that course, including the secondary course that we are very proud that we are able to provide. I do have middle school and high school teachers reaching out to me all the time saying, we have students that are sitting in our class right now that really struggle to read. Do you have anything that will help us? So very proud to be able to start giving some professional learning to our secondary educators and administrators. Another pathway that will help us with House Bill 253 in that implementation is the in addition to letters, and then we have AIMS that I just talked about, we're going to have another opportunity that is available anytime, anywhere. And all of these, of course, are at no cost to educators. So working along a partner of our School Kit group, we developed an asynchronous science of reading course available. It's going to be available through the Kentucky Learning Hub. These courses are designed to support professional learning in multiple ways. So districts can use them for new teacher onboarding, PLCs, leadership development, individual study, because they are asynchronous. So this provides another scalable solution that allows districts to continue building educator capacity while meeting the professional learning expectations of House Bill 253. So very excited to be able to offer those courses. We also, under the Kentucky Reading Academy's umbrella, host a summer conference. So our annual conference has become another important component of Kentucky's literacy system. Each year, we bring together educators from across the Commonwealth to learn directly from national and state literacy experts, Kentucky practitioners, researchers, district leaders. We see that continued growth on your screen in both attendance and the number of learning sessions we've been able to offer is very exciting. And that growth reflects something important. Kentucky educators want this learning and they want practical strategies that they can immediately implement with students. So this conference also allows districts to learn from one another. That's some of my favorite sessions when the districts present on their literacy journeys. We get to celebrate their successes and continue building that statewide consistency around evidence-based literacy instruction. So I'm going to switch gears just a little bit. I talked about the professional learning portion of our umbrella, and I want to talk to you a little bit now about our literacy coaching model. And just to kind of give you an overview, so the professional learning gives educators knowledge, but coaching really helps educators consistently implement that knowledge. So research tells us that one-time workshops rarely change classroom practices. Educators improve when they receive ongoing support while they're doing the work. So Kentucky's statewide coaching model was intentionally designed around that research. Coaches work alongside teachers, modeling lessons, planning instruction, observing classroom practice to provide feedback, and facilitating professional learning communities for their high quality instructional resource. And that goal is to improve instruction for students every day. So just to give you some information, so we try to support multiple levels in our literacy coaching model. So state regional literacy directors work alongside district and school leadership to strengthen that implementation, remove barriers. And then we have our state literacy coaching specialists who work directly with our partnership schools. And they are the ones that are in the classroom Monday through Thursday, every single day, working through coaching cycles, lesson internalization, PLCs, observations, feedback. And something new this year that we're going to be bringing alongside for our partnership schools is our regional principal support leaders. And they are going to focus on strengthening instructional leadership by helping principals build systems that support that high quality literacy instruction. So together, all three of those roles kind of wrap around our partnership schools and provide them a coherent statewide support system that we are working hard to implement and improve daily. Just to give you some numbers about how our model has expanded over the years. So very quickly, I will say it's expanded very quickly. In just 3 years, we've nearly doubled the number of partnership schools while increasing literacy coaches, district support, and then principal leadership support. So every expansion means more educators receiving direct implementation support, and ultimately more students benefiting from stronger literacy instruction. So we started out with 23 partnership schools in our first year, and that has expanded to having 41 partnership schools this coming year that we are so honored to be able to support. just to give you kind of a snapshot of what a state literacy coaching year looks like. So we looked at the data last year, and these numbers illustrate what coaches do basically throughout the entire year. So nearly 5,000 classroom observations, more than 1,200 feedback conversations, hundreds of coaching cycles, over 1,500 PLC sessions, or I'm sorry, not 1,500, but we're getting close to that. We have 641 coach-led PLC sessions, but every PLC builds teacher expertise around high-quality instructional resource. They work hard to build a sustainable system within their partnership schools and teach educators the importance of all of those practices so they can implement them long after the coaching support is gone. Just a couple of data points here around some things that we have observed with our literacy coaching. So an independent evaluation kind of confirmed around our literacy coaching model what we hear from educators across Kentucky. So 94% of teachers surveyed reported that coaching improved both their literacy instruction and student learning. One principal there shared that their literacy coach naturally connected daily instruction with their professional learning, their letters learning, making that implementation practical instead of just based on a theory. So districts also reported meaningful improvements in student outcomes. One district included or concluded that they had a large reduction of the number of students requiring reading improvement plans in just 1 year. That went from 90 to approximately 90 to around 50. So good news in terms of the impact that we're making with our literacy coaches. We say in the Division of Early Literacy, everyone deserves a coach. That is including principals, district support leaders, and even myself. I try to get regular coaching myself and continue to grow and improve in every aspect that we can. We will continue to expand this literacy coaching model as it requires in the Read to Succeed Act. The success of the coaching model has kind of created demand. I have districts that reach out to me saying, can I have a literacy coach? We kind of have a filter that we have to run through in terms of the way that we are able to support them. But we really want to ensure that we have expansion of this work while maintaining quality. So we will continue to identify outstanding literacy educators, increase our technical assistance as we can. The long-term goal is for districts to build sustainable systems and continue producing results without the state literacy coaches. So that is the long-term goal. Moving on to, we talked about the school support. Let's talk now about district support with literacy. So while the coaching focuses heavily on individual schools, our leadership network, called the Kentucky Early Literacy Leadership Network, focuses on district leadership. So district teams learned how to build systems, support implementation across the multiple schools that they have. We've been looking at instructional coherence, high quality instructional resources, PLC structures, leadership practices, and then continuous improvement. So rather than solving one school or focusing on one school at a time, Kentucky Ellen really helps districts create district-wide systems that benefit every elementary school within their district. You can see there that we have multiple districts, a total of 80 districts involved in the Kentucky Ellen. It's some of my favorite work when we get those districts together 3 times a year. They learn so much from one another and learn from our partners in terms of implementation. And it's just the energy in the room and them sharing their journeys with one another is very, very impactful. Just to kind of give you some data in terms of its implementation, I will say that Kentucky Ellen, ICF surveyed our Kentucky Ellen participants, and we also do a feedback survey at the end of our meetings. We have, like I said, 3 meetings, 2 in person, 1 virtual. So our survey data shows substantial growth in participants' confidence and knowledge following their participation in Kentucky Ellen. District leaders leave with a stronger understanding of evidence-based literacy instruction and then greater confidence supporting teachers and principals, which is exciting. So when leaders deepen their knowledge, they're better equipped to make instructional decisions that positively influence students across their entire district. They also noted early literacy knowledge and improved there. And as you can see, the yellow is before, sorry, I should have said that on the slide previously, but the yellow is before, the navy blue is after Kentucky Ellen. So that is what the graph shows. But the slide really highlights one specific survey item, and that is I can implement effective strategies for monitoring high quality instructional resource implementation. So you can see before participating, very few leaders felt highly confident in supporting teachers with that. But after completing the network, nearly all the participants rated themselves at the highest levels. I know that's only one measure, but that really reflects meaningful professional growth that supports stronger leadership decisions. And then one more, we also asked district leaders about their ability to monitor implementation of high quality instructional resources. And this area demonstrated one of the largest gains in the survey. So leaders are becoming more skilled at recognizing strong instruction, supporting their teachers, and ensuring curriculum is implemented rather than just being adopted, with that 65.1% improvement. And I think that's very, very exciting. So just to kind of give you next steps. So we've already kind of checked off that first step. So we are increasing our science of reading professional learning through AIMS that I talked about earlier, and then our asynchronous course on the Learning Hub. We also want to expand family engagement through at-home literacy resources. Very excited about this opportunity, but we're going to be able to partner with a vendor to provide decodable text, knowledge building text, materials, manipulatives, hands-on materials that we are able to ship to parents and students at home. Hopefully multiple, a lot of elementary school students will be able to get these resources. So that is coming. And then that we know that students should experience consistent high quality instruction regardless of being at home or at school. So we really want to ensure that we are providing family engagement opportunities. We're also going to be amplifying some success stories. We're hearing a lot from the field, so I want to make sure that we lift those up for our other districts. And then building an HQIR repository per House Bill 207 that will hopefully reduce the cost and increase adoption of our K-12 reading and writing resources across the district. So that is it from me. As we conclude, and I will take some questions if you have any, I hope one message kind of stands out that we have intentionally built a coherent statewide literacy system. As I said at the beginning, the policy kind of establishes the expectation, but the professional learning that we've been able to offer really increases and builds that educator knowledge, the coaching that helps support implementation, along with our network helping to support district implementation. Evaluation that we've been able to have measures that impact and informs improvement. And then the very encouraging student outcomes that we are beginning to see statewide are the result of all of these pieces that I've talked about today working together. So very honored to be able to represent the work of an entire team today. And that includes district and school leaders and educators in Kentucky that are working so hard to have a shift in literacy practices, in classroom practices, and just honored and so encouraged by the work that we've seen so far. So I will stop talking and open up the floor to any questions that anybody might have.
Hey, do we have any questions? Yes, a question by Martha Emmons.
First of all, I just want to say this is so positive. This just makes my heart sing for Kentucky students and parents and educators. And it's obvious that this whole everyone who's been involved has done such a great job. I've loved reading, and I believe it is the key to success in life. And so this is really one of the most positive things. I could go through slide by slide and say, oh, this is great. Oh, this is great. Oh, here's something else that's amazing. But I don't hear anything about working with the college students who are training to be teachers. It seems to me that the focus is almost entirely, and I may be wrong about this, on people who are already in the field. And that's wonderful, and they're getting great results. But I know how busy teachers are and how much they already have to do. I wonder if there is a way for a next step to maximize impact, to have teachers coming into the classroom who've already had much of this training.
That is a very important and valid point, Martha. I will say this, there is much work happening at the college and university level. Not really my division, so I can't speak to it, but I can tell you this, there's a lot of work happening. We have work groups that are happening, full of professors, college and university leadership that's working to revise their curriculum, that's working to revise their coursework to ensure that they are training teachers and graduating educators that are knowledgeable and trained. So that work is happening. From my end, I will say that I have had many, many universities reach out and have participated in the Science of Reading professional learning. So they are very much interested, invested, and want to make changes that will help. Like you said, teachers are so busy, their plates are so full. We want to make sure that they are coming to schools with the information, knowledge that they have. So a lot of work. I see Commissioner Fletcher had his hand raised earlier. He might be able to give you a little bit more information about the work that's happening, but there is much work happening.
Thank you so much, Christy. And you're absolutely right, Martha, that if we train our teachers in the beginning, we solve a lot of the issues moving forward. We actually have worked with universities and colleges on making sure that our EPPs are having the science of reading and also numeracy, making sure that's aligned. We actually have repurposed and hired 2 people here in the Office of Educator Licensure Effectiveness to work directly with colleges and universities to make sure that we're aligning the science of reading, as make sure that we're aligning their syllabi to the things that we're expecting our teachers to know as we move forward. Because if we can head this off in the training phase, hopefully that'll be less training that we'll have to do in the future. But great point, Martha. That is a lot of the work that we're doing. Chris, you're absolutely right. There are so many of our universities that start out just willingly being a part of this work and wanting to see what exactly is expected of Kentucky teachers. So great point, and that is part of our efforts moving forward. Or has been part of our efforts too, also in the past couple of years also with that.
Thank you, Commissioner. It looks like Rosemary also has a question.
No, just a comment on the discussion that just took place. I'm at a higher education institute, and as part of the law that has been passed in Kentucky, we are required to have our programs evaluated. So an outside consultant came in and looked at what we're teaching, the syllabi and all that. And so that's been happening in all the higher ed institutes that across Kentucky. And now we're just starting in the area of math. That has started also to make sure that what we're teaching in the math corresponds to what our students need to know and to be able to teach in the schools. So the work is going on at higher ed. We understand the need to make sure we're putting out students that understand the expectations.
Thank you, Rosemary, for that. Chuck, do you have a question as well? Chuck, we're not able to hear you. Your voice is distorted.
Would you like to put your comment in the chat and we could read it out loud for you?
While Chuck is doing that, we'll move on to Alan. Alan, you had your hand raised.
Yes, thank you, and appreciate all the work that goes into certainly important areas such as reading. But as I think you know, my concerns have to do a lot with what we think data shows if it's mostly coming through tests. And so I'd like to hear what are the authentic things that we're seeing that kids are reading better, that we're capturing and able to put forward as evidence that these programs are working beyond maybe just test scores rising. And then also the idea about kids' love of reading and their abilities to comprehend deeper understandings and using it to solve problems. I just want to hear more authentic ways that kids are still being able to grow in their reading and show they're improving as readers over time beyond just the ways that we've traditionally captured it.
I appreciate that question, Alan. And I agree with you. There's a lot more evidence and information and data out there that is beyond an assessment score. And we have it at this point in terms of Kentucky summative assessment. I mean, we've seen some movement and we've seen some growth, but our data has all kind of come from our third-party evaluator. So ICF and the Reading Research Center has come along behind us because we do not want to, spend effort, energy, and dollars toward initiatives that we can't show those the impact beyond a student score, like you were saying. So I can't really capture what I can say within the context of what you were asking is that because we have an entire division of early literacy that are boots on the ground, they are in classrooms, they are supporting districts, they are not just faces on a screen like I am today, but they are in the classroom seeing that work, that they are reporting many of those aspects that you just talked about, a increased confidence in our teachers and educators. They are reporting that students, I think I had that data snapshot of, students not being on reading improvement plans. So their supports that they needed are not as much as when we first initially started this work. I wish I could copy and paste the direct messages that I get from superintendents and from school principals and kind of put them out for everybody to see, because I'm honored to be able to get those specific text message and emails that say, I had a classroom full of first graders when this first started that didn't love to read, that didn't have the tools or the skill set that they needed to be able to decode text and to read confidently. And now I have at Christmas an entire classroom of first graders that are reading, that are begging to, have their hand raised, begging to read, that are, confident readers and are learning and growing every day. So we do have that beyond the context of a school assessment score. We also have those individual stories from our coaches in our districts in our Kentucky LN network. And we also have, beyond the state summative score, we have a lot of screening data that's showing improvement in students. So they started at one level and they have grown tremendously throughout the school year, throughout this work. So I appreciate that. And definitely we take that type of data very seriously. I think Mickey has come on to give you some more information too. Go ahead, Mickey.
Absolutely. I just wanted to remind the group, we do have 3 case studies from different districts across the state that were a part of our ICF evaluation. And so we can drop those in the chat or get those to the committee members after the fact. I'm happy to share those with Jessica to share. There's a lot of quantitative data as well within the year 1 and year 2 ICF evaluation. So you're able to hear quotes from teachers, from principals, from district leaders that really help to share the story of the work that's going on beyond just the summative assessment scores.
Thank you, Mickey.
Thank you, Mickey. Do we have any other questions before we move on in our agenda?
This is Thomas. Just a quick comment. I greatly appreciate, and I know my colleagues in the Office of Teaching and Learning and across the agency really appreciate the profound existential questions as it relates to literacy, as it relates to numeracy, and how we as a Commonwealth can not only raise test scores, but more importantly, how can we develop this passion, this love for reading? I will say this very carefully, that it's been 5 or 6 years where we have, as an agency, have directly focused on the science of reading, on the research behind reading. And we would be hard pressed to find another state or anywhere else that has made this type of progress in such a short time with the amount of resources that we have. I think Kentucky should be really proud of that. Secondly, as you've heard, this is not only a cross-agency commitment to improving literacy across the Commonwealth, this is also a commitment to working with higher ed, especially working with our early educational providers. This is a commitment to working with our university faculty members. I see we have a couple folks here. There's also a work group, and certainly Mickey can talk more about this, where we have folks from our education preparation program, folks from higher ed, and across the agency, all working together to improve the outcomes for literacy. And it's really been a great team effort that's only getting stronger. And we're seeing some very early quantitative and qualitative results.
Thank you.
Do we have any more questions or comments? Okay. Thank you so much, Christy, for that information. I appreciate everyone jumping in to support her and the work that they're doing. I'll say, as a superintendent in Rockcastle County, I've seen tremendous growth in our reading scores, and also the comment that Alan made, the love of reading, because when you're a kindergartner and a first grader and you suddenly can read, then that love comes along with that. You're not walking into those early learning classrooms daily struggling, and you're able to develop that love of reading. So thank you all for the work that you're doing to support all of our teachers across the state. Okay, next on our agenda, I would like to welcome Dr. Jennifer Stafford, the Associate Commissioner in the Office of Assessment and Accountability, along with Jenny Larkins, our Policy Advisor in the Office of Assessment and Accountability, to provide us an accountability regulation update. And this is a first read. Dr. Stafford?
Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. Really want to first introduce myself to Dr. Pusateri. Welcome to the School Curriculum Assessment Accountability Council. My name is Jennifer Stafford. I currently serve as the Associate Commissioner, and I want to thank all the members for being here. We are at an exciting juncture right now with the first read of the regulation. Because we have been developing this accountability system for several years. Due to the great leadership of Karen Dodd and the Kentucky United We Learn Council and the KDE leadership, we have had tremendous progress toward our vision and the goal of the United We Learn Council was to launch an accountability system that was meaningful and useful to all learners. And so we are at the juncture that we now have many recommendations, particularly from this council, as well as a multitude of others that have helped shape and guide the development of this regulation. So you came in at an exciting time in regards to this regulation. To help support today's discussion, you have the proposed regulation that's available in your Google Drive, and we'll refer to that. We do also have, again, the presentation that you're seeing here, but you do have further information in that draft regulation. So today's conversation is an opportunity for you to provide more feedback, more input before the board hears the regulation for their first read in August. Following that first read, we will continue to gather input from other advisory councils, other stakeholders and partners, and we will return to the Kentucky Board of Education in October for their second and final read. That means that in your meeting in September, you'll have the final opportunity to take a more formal support or more formal vote for on the regulation for that second read going into the board. As we walk through the changes today, we are especially interested in your questions, your recommendations, your perspectives as we move forward with the regulation, because again, it meets the statutory and regulatory requirements of both state and federal law. So that there's policies that we'll share that that are shaping the recommendations, and we will move through that. So next slide, please. And the next one. So particularly, we'll start with some of the proposed changes. As you know, that this is a result of House Bill 257 and the statutory requirements from the General Assembly. For the assessments, the legislation from the past legislative session removes on-demand writing and editing and mechanics from the state assessment system. On the accountability, the legislation removes the quality of school climate and safety survey as an indicator, and it also removes the status and change language in response to the proposals from that Kentucky United We Learn Council. At the same time, it adds two new indicators for our accountability system, which we'll focus on primarily today, which is individual student growth in reading and math, as well as chronic absenteeism. And we have Jesse Carlton here with us today, who is the expert in this calculation, and so she'll be here to provide our technical details on that, and we appreciate her being here. So these statutory changes then require Kentucky Department of Education to change our regulation, and that's one of the primary reasons we're seeking feedback and have been seeking feedback across a multitude of advisory councils. The proposed changes are a collection of all of the feedback that we've received to date, that includes local superintendent advisory council, school curriculum assessment accountability. Commissioner has a number of advisory councils, and we've been to all of them that will hear and have us on their agenda. And that does include the Kentucky Board of Education. We had a really lengthy conversation with them on their last meeting. So at this point, I'll turn it over to Jenny Larkins, who is our policy advisor in the Office of Assessment and Accountability, who's going to preview some of the changes for you in that regulation.
Thank you, Jennifer. Good morning, SCAAC members. Jennifer mentioned that you received a copy of the draft regulation last week. I hope you've had opportunity to review that, but I'll summarize it for you here today. In the first section, we've added definitions related to the new components. And then while doing so, we also looked at the other definitions. And so we've amended some existing definitions where we thought they could be clearer. Jennifer mentioned also the components that were removed in House Bill 257. So we've removed language about those components, status and change, quality of school climate and safety indicator, and we've removed writing from the state assessment results indicators, wherever those were written. But we've also added those new components that were added along with some details about how they're going to work in accountability. So you'll see individual student growth in reading and mathematics and chronic absenteeism added as new state indicators within the regulation. We received very consistent feedback on the chronic absenteeism indicator, as Jennifer mentioned, from all of those groups, and you'll see that reflected throughout the document. We had very clear direction that to measure chronic absenteeism using the federal methodology of using school day absences, and that's for accountability. We've clarified that a student is considered absent for the day if they miss 50% or more of his or her school day. Now, again, that's for accountability purposes and not to be confused with any other purpose that you might use attendance measures. We have described that for a student to be included in a school's or a district's accountability, that they must be enrolled for a half academic year, and then we've defined that half academic year as 50 days. In the regulation, you're going to see the table, the growth value table that we've proposed for individual student growth, and the table that contains the new overall accountability weights that we've proposed. And we've also got those in some upcoming slides. There are a few minor amendments that we needed to make to address changes in House Bill 562. As a reminder, that bill established a new diploma option for students in the alternate assessment program. So you'll see changes in areas where they apply to graduation rate. Now, this regulation hasn't had an amendment in several years, not a major revision. So there are also some areas where we'd like to clean up some things with technical and clarifying amendments while we have the regulation open. Next slide, please. Have we gone to the next slide? I can't tell. Well, I'll go ahead and say that our ask of the SCAAC members today is to provide feedback, as Jennifer mentioned, on the changes as we've written them, as they're written currently in the document. So that you'll see there that in the growth value table, you'll see subdivisions among the various performance levels: novice, apprentice, proficient, distinguished. You'll see they've been divided into low and high. We'd like your thoughts on that. And we'd like your thoughts on how the points are distributed throughout the table. And then you'll see the table of overall accountability weights, and we'd like to have your thoughts and recommendations on that. So I'll turn it over now back to Jennifer, Dr. Stafford, to have that discussion with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Jenny. And Jessica, if you'll go to the next slide. So the growth value table is designed to measure and recognize student growth from one year to the next. The model is based on points, and we had in our last meeting a really robust conversation about whether to have a categorical growth model or utilize the student growth percentiles. In conversations with, again, other advisory groups, including this one, the decision and recommendation from those was to use a categorical growth. So as Jenny mentioned, the table is broken into categories of novice high and low, apprentice high and low, proficient high and low, and distinguished high and low. So how you approach this table is on the left-hand side in the vertical, the first column, is the prior year, what the student would have gotten, what performance level the students would have been in the prior year, and in reading and math. And then across the top is the current year performance. So the way that you would read it, if the student was, let's say, distinguished high in 2024, and you go all the way across and was still distinguished high in 2025, then the intersection of those rows and columns would produce then the point value that the student would the school would receive for that student's performance, which in that example would be 125. Now, if another example, if the student was distinguished high in 2024 but was distinguished low in 2025, then that intersection would be 50 points for the school. So so you're looking at students' performance relative there to where the performance was the prior year. So the underlying logic in this model is that 100 points represents the expected outcome. In other words, if the student demonstrates approximately 1 year of academic growth from 1 year to the next, from that spring summative assessment to the spring summative assessment from 1 year to the next, then they receive the full points of 100 points that it represents that expected outcome. Now, you'll also notice is I want to point out just a few details around this model, and I'll invite the commissioner and Jenny to provide any other context. Students who maintain their performance, and that was an important piece around many of our advisory groups. If a student maintains their performance, so they are distinguished low the prior year and distinguished low the next year, then that is expected, and that represents then that full amount of points for the school. If they also improve by 1/2 level, so for example, if you look at then let's say proficient high, and they went to distinguished low, so that's 1/2 level, they would also receive that that full amount of credit. And Commissioner, I do see your hand up here, so I'll stop.
Excellent job, Dr. Stafford. Again, trying to take in the input. You know, we looked at percentile growth. There's several different categories we looked at, but it seemed like the table categorical growth was what came to the top in most of our conversations, if not all. And the discussions here, even with this table itself, I don't know. I've probably seen 7 or 8 different different tables, maybe even written 3 or 4 different tables. But we've had a lot of great discussions, and some of the logic behind this. Jennifer again did an excellent job. Is just for a second, think about status. Okay, let's forget about growth for just a second. Let's think about status. We expect students to be proficient. And the score that a student gets for being proficient is 100. If you score below that, below the expectation, you would get 50. In other words, essentially half credit, if you will. But if you score at the novice level, you get 0. And if you score at the distinguished level or above what's expected, it's 125. So using those same numbers that people are used to, if a student is proficient low in 3rd grade, but they're also proficient low in 4th grade, they went from being proficient low in 3rd grade standards, they've acquired a year of growth to be proficient low at 4th grade standards. So the expectation would be a student to grow 1 year. So shifting from our status to growth. So if you grow that 1 year, that you would get the expected 100 points. We also added in there if you increased a half level, if you will, it was also 100 points. But if you went up 2 levels, that's where if you will, the bonus of to 25, much like what you do with distinguished of 125. Now, if you drop a half level, you do not get the full 100 credit. You get 50 points. And if you drop 2, you get 0 points. So it's I won't call it novice, apprentice, proficient, distinguished when it comes to growth, but it's along those same lines, but trying to look at mainly just how a student grows. Now, there was some discussions there as far as like if you remain in the novice category. So there are some discrepancies. If you look at the first 2 columns, if you go from novice high to novice high, you're still in the novice range. So that was the 50 points. And then, of course, novice low, no growth. But if you went up a half category in novice low to novice high, that was the 100. And then distinguished, if you're a distinguished high student and you remain distinguished high, you have grown considerably, and we left that at 125. So again, great job explaining, Jen, but I wanted to kind of give some perspective on some other things that we've added to that as we went through. Jenny, is there anything you'd like to add?
No,
Jenny
you both
Larson?
did a great job. Thank you.
Dr. Stafford, Jenny, Jennifer?
Thank you. I think that you hit all of the exceptions as well. The exceptions are again on the ends, and we want to point those out to you because we are looking for your feedback, your questions, because those are helpful to us as we then move forward. I will note we do have a hand up. Janabeth, is that your hand up? I see.
Yes, that is. Thank you. I just want to start by saying I have seen many iterations of this table, and I'm happy to see where it is. I do want us to look holistically, and I understand the distinguished high to distinguished high because there is nowhere on our scale as a categorical model to grow. But I'm very concerned about the other corner of the table, the novice low, the novice high, those 2 zeros in that first column, and then also the 50 going from novice high to novice high, and the 0 going from apprentice low to novice high. What makes me concerned is this metric is about student growth. And if you simply take what Brian Gong used to do whenever we talked about status, which is to try to think of this ideal school, if I had an entire school that was proficient low, and then the next year they were proficient low, I would get a growth score of 100. And I can agree with that. And I can say, okay, we said the expected outcome is that you remain the same. However, we have falsely penalized yet again the low achieving schools. We're talking about growth. So if I have a novice high school and they hold everybody at novice high, their growth measure is only 50. And so that creates a false measure of growth. It's applying the status culture to growth. And what we need is to be able to have this idea, like when I see a school score getting close, their status score getting close to 100, I know that means that most of the kids are proficient. I need that same type of metric to be able to apply to growth. And so I caution us about changing our flow of the chart when we get down to novice. And here's the underlining reason for that. If you make novice to novice performance lower than proficient to proficient performance, you are yet again penalizing those schools that are low achieving. We have to have the growth measure be the same no matter where you're growing. If I need to lose 25 pounds and I've lost 5, it doesn't matter where my starting point is. Like I should be awarding that growth or that progress towards a metric. The other thing that's probably my most important point because I don't want a false measure of growth. And honestly, if I'm a high achieving parent, a parent of a high achieving student, and my kid has been proficient low all the way through, they're not growing beyond their expected growth. And so that I should be pushing to challenge that school. The second piece is I would really encourage, and I understand why we're sticking with the 50, 100, 125, but if I move a kid up 1 level, that needs to send my growth score over the expected growth of 100. So I would encourage that 1 level jump to be either 110 or 115. And I know that adds another number, but if I have a school that's moving kids more than the expected one, I want that score to be over 100. And so when I'm thinking of that scale, a school that has a score of 100 or close to 100, any school approaching 100 means they're maintaining the academic progress of students. If I want to see who's doing really well at growth, I want those numbers to range from 100 to 125. When you make that one cell movement and I still just get 100, I can't see that that difference between those two schools. And frankly, a school that's moving kids from apprentice high to proficient is a school I want to watch. And that could be true for a school moving a student from novice high to apprentice low. So I think we have to add that either 110 or 115 to the level so that I can see that scale going over 100.
Jana Beth, those are excellent comments, and thank you so much. I'm really always so thankful that you're on this committee because this is definitely your forte and always brings so much to the table for us to consider and think about. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
Commissioner, do you have anything you would like to comment?
Jana Beth, those are ideas that I like. I like the idea of, like, if you're moving up a half level, that there's some points in there. And there were some tables that had that in there as a partial growth. Now, and honestly, there was one table that your idea of a true growth table, there was some tables in there where we treated apprentice differently than what we did novice, what we did proficient. So we took that into account. I can see your point about novice high to novice high, because technically you grew and added to that. So that would be, from your perspective, would be in that novice high to novice high would be 100, and then the apprentice low to novice high would be 50. If I'm hearing you correctly?
Right. I would take the novice high, it would match. And then I also, and this is going to sound a little radical, but I'm kind of torn with what to do with the novice low to novice low. I think scoring that a 0 is really harsh. Technically, a novice low to novice low school is the same as a proficient high to a proficient high in terms of growth. I think a 0 for holding at the novice place, when you look at some of the schools that have historic low status scores, this is just another way to make that score seem even lower. And so I can see why it's hard to say a novice low to a novice low is 100. And I can kind of concede on that point, but I really hate the 0 when we give apprentice low to apprentice low 100.
Valid point. I think the only thing I would disagree with, if novice low has such a range of you could drop, there's no other half level. It's almost the same. It's the same logic of distinguished high to distinguished high. So the 125 on that upper right end, if we kept the same logic, that would only be 100. But I see your points on the second column. The first column I would struggle with. I would, but I even like the idea of the 110 or maybe 115. Those are all good points too.
Maybe a compromise is to leave the novice low to novice low at 0, connecting it to how distinguished high to distinguished high is 125, and consider that novice high to novice high should be 100 and novice high to novice low should be 50. Maybe kind of fixing those. And so then you're basically saying the two spectrums,
the two corners,
diagonal.
Yeah.
We can't go anywhere on those, and so we're calling those what they are, but everything else will line up.
Okay.
Thank you, Jana Beth.
What about thoughts from others on the 110 on the, if you move up a half level? What are some thoughts? I'm interested to see other people's thoughts about the 110 or 115 number for a half level movement. What are some thoughts there?
Robert
Anybody?
Tuck has his hand up.
Okay, Robert.
Speaking to your question particularly, I mean, I like that idea. I think it's more equitable, and it provides a reward to students that are moving, because you look at Hattie's stuff, 1 year growth, kind of that research. But also, I had the question to maybe consider. I'm not necessarily married to it, but something that I think at least needs to be discussed and looked at, as you move up in the table, to proficient, say proficient high up, and then students drop down, there's no difference between moving to like a proficient low to novice low. So I just wonder about being equitable. Do we give some points for those areas, even though they're making a little bit of a slide? Does that make sense?
I think so, but I think I don't think it becomes a true growth table at that point, Robert, because if we're looking at, we already award proficiency. If you get a proficient score, you're getting points for that proficient score on the status side. Again, I'm using the old language, the status side.
Yeah.
So if we look at, and again, I'm taking out the corners like Jana Beth, we're taking out the extremes of distinguished high to distinguished high, novice low to novice low. I think if we start scoring points other than just for growth or increase or decrease, I think it goes away from the idea of growth and more about status. And we already have a status score.
Yeah. Okay.
Good thought. And honestly, there were some tables that had that in it too, Robert. There was about, if you land at proficiency, should that be different than landing at apprentice? But then we were focused more on where they landed in the status, and you already get scores for status. So, Jana Beth, I think I really like your reasoning there of this being a true growth table. Good point.
So you don't think even like with proficient, if they land in proficient, which is our goal, to maybe even consider that aspect of it? Like I said, I'm not married to it. I'm just wondering.
Well, and we talked a lot about that one of our options looked at that. But on the other hand, you're already receiving scores for proficiency in the status part. This should be truly about growth. So how much did you move as opposed to where did you land, if that makes sense? Good points.
I think one thing that's interesting, I'm sorry, I just think this is really a neat way to think about proficiency. We in Kentucky have thought of proficiency as the ceiling. We have said that's our goal in Kentucky, and we have put it as the ceiling. In reality, when you're talking about growth, a proficient kid needs to be continuing to make progress. We should view proficiency as the floor for our high achievers. And so it's a mindset change to get people to say, let's talk about growth differently. And it's really, we've learned a lot about looking at growth throughout the years.
Okay. Alan, you have your hand raised.
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you. This is a challenge that's never going to be solved perfectly because there's too many kinds of variables and assumptions and so forth to be doing it. So I know we end up having to land kind of just where we can get some consensus. I'm very much in agreement with the things that Jana Beth was saying in terms of things, as well as Rob on the which was it Rob? I'm missing the name, but the superintendent Tuck, is that right?
Yes, Robert Tuck.
Yes, okay, that's what I thought. That and airing kind of the maybe logic problems that get caused. This is really a logic table, isn't it? I mean, in terms of it's trying to express it through numbers and through categories, but there's a logic that's being tried to be solved or followed. One little one I thought it was awful much of a penalty almost. If you were distinguished high, if you went to distinguished low, you take a harder hit than anybody else. And I thought, well, what about that? Why do you go from 125 to 50? So I just bring that up as maybe a little bit of a inconsistency in the logics as well. But I'm also going to ask some questions that are a little bit beyond. I often approach things with two main questions. What is the future we desire? And what is the problem we're trying to solve? And I think there's an order to that. If you just try to the problem we're trying to solve first, you might just be doing it within the same status quo, versus future we desire. Now say what kinds of problems are keeping us from reaching the future we desire, allows us to get a different handle on this. And one of the things I want to point out is, in reality, how close it can be for a kid to be in one category and almost in the next one. And how much we then take a crude jump to say, oh, all of a sudden, novice low to novice high, like we're looking at the midpoints of those two, like averages, versus I'm still novice low, but I'm 1 point away from novice high if that's where I really landed. And so that in some respects, these kinds of charts have a certain level of imprecision absolutely built within them. And they mask sometimes more than they reveal, even about the growing nature of kids. The other thing I'll also say is that since this is not like growth in 2 days from now, but a whole year, if you stayed in the same category, this is a moving category, meaning you did have to grow to stay in the same category.
Mm-hmm.
You had to grow. If you stayed the same, you would not have grown and you would have dropped categories likely. So even staying in the same category may be growth. It looks like it's not just because of how we have categorized it. But 1 year from now, being proficient at the, 8th grade level versus the 7th grade level, that was a higher, harder thing. And I had to grow to stay proficient at the same level. So all these things for me are kind of pinch points that I want to push us about. We may end up only being, because we're just able to do only so much and solve it, because partially we're taking what we have done and then trying to go from there and using that to solve the problem, when I'm still worried that we have labels that kids internalize. I'm distinguished, I'm novice, and the problems that this has. I understand we're trying to solve something about school accountability in a way. I get it, but that is not apart from how a kid digests this, about how they see themselves as a learner. And so I'm just kind of wondering about all this and so forth. And I won't have a solution here, but I want this in the room because in as much as any of these steps might be something we can come to consensus on, and within we can at least make a logic with it, there are still some pretty big internal flaws with this in terms of capturing the growth of a learner and expressing it so that the public, schools, districts, teachers, legislators, and the kids themselves can really say how they see themselves and show themselves as learners. And when we then put red and yellow and green and we use the numbers like 100, it sometimes also makes it harder if we go to like a rubric-based way where we might have a, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, or 1, 2, 3, 4, or something like that. There still can be problems with that. But this one also kind of keeps in place the mindset that 100%, I know that's not what this is necessarily, is kind of perfect, and we grade on scales of 100. I'm saying for teachers and legislators that come from that background, I think they get kind of thrown off. Oh, 100 is the norm. And that corresponds to what they think of has been their understanding of if I got 100% on a test, I get an A+, and all of those things. We're still kind of trapped in a little bit of that. So even here, I'm wondering if we had a different numbering system with the same logic. So it still wouldn't solve some of the points I'm saying, but if you just got like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 or something like that, instead of the 50 and 100, which seem to be drastic cuts for blocks of where people are versus the gradation of spread where they are within their range. This doesn't capture that, but I can get to where I see a logic, and I appreciate all the ones. If you take this board, there's still some logical things that we could make better with what Janet Beth was saying, I think, about it. And also, I think was also brought up by Superintendent Tuck, the other part about kind of proficiency has been our goal in a way. So this also changes. I know that's captured in the other part of this, and this is about growth. But if we do say that you are growing to stay the same category, because it's a whole year's worth of growth that you're still proficient at, that was growing. And I think that we at least have to wrestle with those things. So thank you for listening to me. I hope that some of those points at least make some sense, because in some respects, when we get to accountability purposes, we end up acting on some of these things like, oh, that school did good, or that school didn't do good, or that kid did good, or that kid didn't do good, or that teacher did do good, or that teacher didn't do good. And it's a pretty crude instrument for really demonstrating where kids actually landed. And then if we're putting them together and doing reading and math together instead of keeping them apart, that also conflates that. I mean, I just know, for me, I just am reminded of Todd Rose's book, The End of Average. And I just, somewhere along the way, we seem still a little trapped in how we're expressing this. And I don't not appreciate the conundrum, because we're not in a place where we can get to perfection. So I'm not opposed. I'm not going to say, oh, don't be for this. But I want to point these things out because somewhere along the way, we have to get more towards the future we desire and figure out what are the substantive problems that are keeping us from getting there. Because in the long run, this won't get us there.
I'm going to pull back, Alan, on two. I'll make two comments. One, that's the importance of local accountability. That's the reason why we push so much for local accountability to give what's the true growth of a child? How much did you grow as a communicator? How much did you grow as a collaborator? How much did you grow as a problem solver? So that's where the local accountability piece comes into. But we're also tied into federal measures of how do we get an index? And again, I'm not a big fan of this, but we also have parameters from the federal side of how do you, again, I don't like this, but how do you label your CSI schools? So then you have to have a formula to put together to get an index. And so we already have one index of novice, apprentice, proficient, distinguished, what that looks like. Plus now we're going to add in the index that deals with, we dropped the survey, and now we have chronic absenteeism. So how do you get a formula that meshes together to get you a number? Again, I don't like the rank and file of schools. I don't like that, because in my opinion, I think what we need to look at is, can a student be successful? Once they leave our schools, can they be successful? And a test score is not going to tell you that. A test score is not, in my opinion. What's going to tell you that is a student persistent? Are they able to, do they have grit, persistence? Are they going to be able to be collaborators, communicators, critical thinkers? So that's why the local accountability piece is so important. Now, as far as the numbers, we've been charged with finding a growth table. And again, we pushed for how do we measure growth? So to take away the idea of where did you land versus did you move up or down? That's also what we were struggling with. So I see your points. And again, I think that's the importance of the local accountability piece. And that's a lot of our work right now. We have regional innovation specialists that are out there helping districts develop their own local accountability models. We put those toolkits out. And we've had some districts that stepped out on their own and worked with John Tanner and how did they have their community-based assessment systems. So I see your point, but you're right. I think I'll go back to some, like Morehead State a few years ago did research on graduation rates for students based on ACT scores. They were finding that students that were scoring 22, 23, and 24, or 21, 22, 23, 24 on their ACT was graduating at a much higher rate than their kids that were scoring the 34, 35s. The reason? Because those students, probably, in my opinion, those students had to struggle and they had to work through struggle and they had to work through probably putting more effort. So when they got to college, that extra work was not new to them. So our desired state is to have students that are productive in society and successful and achieving the dreams that they set for themselves. It's going to take more than a test score, and that's where the local accountability comes in.
I appreciate that. I don't mean to jump in front of someone else. Just one real fast response is that I don't disagree with all the challenges. I appreciate that. I just want these two things to talk to each other a little bit more. So that's where we have to find the way that local and state can translate and start thinking about that way. So it's not what we'll have this year. I get it. But as we push ourselves, that's what we have to do more, because otherwise some people will not even think the local one counts as much as the state. And so they've got to have some way we can connect it. But thank you so much. I appreciate your comment.
Carrie, I may ask you a question. I'm going to put you on the spot. Does your local community look for your community-based assessment system, or do they look for state test results more?
Community-based, because it's the goals that they've been a part of setting. And it's what they value. So then people value what they're part of building. And they have built these goals for our community, and that's what they're tracking.
Yeah. So, and again, and the reason why I say that, Alan, is I think local accountability is that first step to get to that desired state.
Look, I've been part of that in Jefferson County too. It's true. But then when you have the vast proportion of all the schools in the state in your own county as the state accountability, it makes the conversation with the state's leading newspaper, it makes it a little different challenge, right? So that's where we're up against that part, and we have just as bright a kids here.
Absolutely.
And it's coming to hit them harder in that, and makes it a bigger weight for us to get the local to be the one when they just keep having that thrown at us. So I want them to talk to each other a little bit more. That's all I'm saying. But I love where Carrie is. I want us to be there. We've worked robustly there. It's just, it's harder on us with that extra challenge. Thank you.
Yep. Thank you, Al. Do we have any other questions before we move on in our agenda?
I think we have another hand up, Dr. Ballinger.
Yes, Jennifer.
Hi, everybody. Jennifer Pusateri. First, Jennifer, I appreciate your work on this. This is, I mean, almost an impossible task. So thank you so much for all of the time that you and your team have put into it. So I'm coming to you from a district that is a Title I district that also has very opposing scores. We have a lot of high, distinguished high type students. We have a lot of students that are in that novice category. That just is what our district is. And so I'm trying to think to myself, if I'm a parent of a student who was a novice low and stayed at a novice low, this is similar to the conversation we've already had, and there's a student who is a distinguished high that stayed at a distinguished high, how can I explain to those two parents that your kid's staying the same and not moving backwards or whatever, that how is 1 0 and 1 125 or whatever it is? Like it's not fair, and it doesn't, to me, it doesn't pass the logic test. And so, like some others have suggested, I appreciate the thought about moving the novice, let me think, apprentice low to novice high, that kind of backwards, just kind of moving that second category up one notch. And then considering, like some others have shared, keeping that novice low to novice low. I'm also thinking, I'm sorry, novice low to novice low at 100% or potentially even 50% would be better than nothing. I'm also thinking about the change between a student who was a distinguished high last year and is now a distinguished low. And I'm thinking about individual kids, and we know that we have so many more kids with anxiety and things like that. And as we all know, these are a representation of what you're able to do as a student on one day on one test. And that doesn't necessarily represent you the whole day. So if you're having a terrible day and I now score a little bit lower than I scored the year before, then I am now a detriment to my school and to their score. You know what I'm saying? Like some of those things I think maybe on those two ends might need a little more ironing out so that it really is more fair. Thank you.
Hey, just on that point, had we decided if growth was going to be reported to families? I didn't think the legislation required that. And I thought students will still just get their novice, apprentice, proficient, distinguished score as always. I think that's an important, what you just raised is a great point. And I'm curious what gets reported to families.
So the performance level that the student would receive would be the novice, apprentice, proficient, distinguished, not on their student individual report. Would it be divided between novice, like the low and high? It will just be the performance level. Individual student growth. I don't think that we've really talked about the difference between and how to report that back to parents, if at all. But we value your feedback if you have thoughts about that.
Well, I think from a strictly assessment literacy standpoint, the categorical growth is not great for students. It's good for looking at the whole school. And to go with what Alan said, is if we were going to report growth, it should be scale scores or more granular so that you could talk about you moved up. But honestly, I think from a parent standpoint, we don't need to get into the individual student growth for students and families as much, especially not in categorical moves because of what was just raised. That was a great point to think about. What are we doing to anxiety of students? And I would say on the idea of the novice low, what's not known to a lot of people is that the novice, like if you were to take just a line or a ruler and divide it by the categories, the novice low is one of the largest categories in when we do what we call bookmarking, where we put in where the different levels are. And so there's a lot of movement in novice low. And I think the distinguished high is a pretty small category. And so to stay distinguished high is really hard. And so I think that's a piece of assessment literacy that we have to keep talking about as we move to growth. But I am totally in support of us really thinking about what does the student know about their growth, and are they going to see these categorical models? Because I think it does have adverse consequences.
Thank you, Jennifer.
Thank you, Jennifer. Any other comments before we move on into our next category?
Okay.
If we have,
yeah.
Oh, sorry, Jennifer, you go right ahead.
Okay, thank you. Jessica, if you'll just move to the next slide, please. So the next conversation we want to have is about the accountability weights. So before considering the proposed changes, it may be helpful just to review what the current accountability weights are. So you see here that for elementary schools where reading and math account for science, social studies, and writing, English learner, as well as the climate and safety survey. Those are for elementary and middle schools. And then you have the additional 2 indicators of post-secondary readiness and graduation rate for high schools. So this kind of served as a baseline for comparison as we talked about the accountability weights. I know this council had a great discussion about chronic absenteeism and the new accountability indicator as well as growth at our last meeting. So Jessica, if you'll move to the next slide. So these are proposed weights based on, again, the conversations that we've had throughout the multiple advisory committees. And I just want to note for you that there are some limitations and parameters that the Every Student Succeeds Act puts in place around the weights as it relates to the overall. So our accountability weights in the state assessment results in reading and math, and then the individual student growth, those two, plus the English learner at elementary and middle school. And then we'll add in to the high school, the graduation rate. So those three, and then that fourth one at high school must have the substantial weight. So those three at elementary and middle, the reading and math, then state assessment results in reading, math, individual student growth, English learner must have this substantial weight over and above then the state assessment results in science, social studies, chronic absenteeism, and post-secondary readiness. So those, and the way that Kentucky, we interpret the substantial weight is more than 50%, so 51%. So you'll see here that those parameters, so if you combine the at elementary and middle schools, the reading math for state assessment results, growth, and EL, you'll find that that's over 50%. And then if you add together the high schools with reading and math, English learner, and graduation rate, you'll see that those are more than 50% as well. So we have those parameters. We heard a good bit of feedback from our accountability thought partners that the state assessment results in science and social studies should be weighted as much as possible within those parameters. You all as a council were united on the fact that chronic absenteeism should be low. And that was a consistent measure, a consistent conversation when we were talking about chronic absenteeism and moving forward. So just want to lay those parameters on the table for us as we think through the weights and then get your feedback on the proposed weights here that ensure those academic indicators continue to carry the substantial weight. So Jan Beth, I see your hand raised.
Yes, I've studied all this ahead of time, so I had my comments ready to go. So I know I seem eager. Thank you for working on this. I love the elementary rates, and I think the high school rates are right in line. I'm curious if there's any way to give more weight to science and social studies at the middle school, because I think you have such good content basis being laid for that. Right now, you know, we went from if you look at how much because growth is still reading and math, and that's 60% of that score is just reading and math. And so that's 30 for each category. That's the way we kind of think of it. And that means in science and social studies, it will only be 15. And I get it at the elementary level because there is an overemphasis on reading and math because we're teaching kids how to read and the numeracy, and it fits with everything the legislation's doing. I'm curious if there's any way to move some points over to science and social studies to not make that a 30 to 15 when I look at total points for those subject areas, not in the categories of the accountability system.
Other thoughts from your colleagues around those weights? Because obviously, as we mentioned, the reading and math growth, graduation rate, and English language progress must have the substantial weight. So you see that at middle school, there is some ability for movement within that, within those categories.
Alan, do you have a question or comment?
Yeah, so I'm wondering about, it looks like we've determined substantial weight is 65. That's what the categories, they seem to all add up to that. The reading and math, assessment and growth is 60 plus English learner. That's 65, the same in middle. And in high school, it's 45. And is it 20? Does that one does count in the
So
accountability?
at high
Or
school,
post-secondary?
it's the reading and math, state assessment results,
Yeah,
English learner progress, and graduation rate. Because
exactly.
we don't have the growth. We talked through that and the possibility of having growth at high school. That we took across the advisory groups and stakeholders, and there was enough concern not to include growth at the high school level for this proposal, because there was just a variety of reasons that stakeholders gave. So based on that input, we did not propose to have growth at high school. So then the substantial weight without growth at high school would have to be the reading and math, state assessment results, graduation rate, and English language progress.
So following up on Jana Beth's comments, I'm in agreement with her, like at the elementary level and the reasons why. In middle school, I would be open to having a little bit of a shift from the assessment results going to a little bit higher on for the science and social studies. But what I'm concerned about is the jump in what the state assessment results are and the weight and the stakes at the high school level for reading and math. And then a diminishment of science and social studies. And I also am concerned where we have post-secondary readiness and graduation rate. Those seems to be things in the high school level that could be elevated a bit. So I just wish I would see a little bit more. Kids don't have discrete reading classes. We have different things, but discrete reading classes in high school for the most part. They do have discrete math classes, but they do have science and social studies ones, and I guess I would like to see maybe that not be dropped quite so much from 30 to 20 when you get to the high school. And I'm always open for more post-secondary readiness, and I think graduation is always a goal. And so I feel like there's a little bit more flex this could do, not by lots, but down a little in one and up a little or so in a couple of others, especially at the high school and maybe the one category that Janet Beth was talking about, the middle school. But that's kind of what I'm thinking about.
Thank you.
Superintendent Tuck?
As I'm looking at this, I would also, I'm going back and thinking about high school transformation and what we're trying to do there as well, and how this kind of impacts that a little bit. And when I look at, reading and math, and I'll use, I guess, math as the example, and we look at post-secondary readiness, and that some math classes can count in post-secondary readiness, but our district is very leery to move away because they need that Algebra 2, which is a junior course as well. So I would just say maybe consider that holistically as we look at that. I would also like to see post-secondary readiness kind of going up a little bit, and I think that supports that transformation of high schools, and also links a little bit more to local indicators as well. But those are some things I've been thinking about as I'm looking at this.
So Jen, remind me one more time, you have to have reading, math, the English language learner, graduation rate.
At
Are
the high
those
school,
at the high school, and what does it have to add up to at least?
51.
51. I really like Robert's suggestion there on maybe the post-secondary readiness increasing. I support that, Robert. I think that's a good point, because that would influence our high school transformation work. I really like that idea. Thank you, Robert, for that.
Robert, I agree with that as well. I think that's our goal ultimately when they get to high school is as students graduate, number one, are they graduating? Number two, are they ready in some form or fashion to move into whether that be a college atmosphere, or is that going straight into the workplace, or is that going into the military? So I think if our goal is to prepare students for success, post-secondary readiness needs to have a little bit stronger weight.
Thank you.
Let's see, do we have any other hands up
And-
right now?
I'm sorry, I raised my hand, I just jumped in. If you raise the graduation rate, that seems like it would go up in terms of how much you have to get over 50%. So like if raising the post-secondary readiness came out of the reading and math state results, but that wouldn't still get you over 50%, because then you'd have 40, 5, and 5. So you might be thinking, what I've heard the last two superintendents say, that post-secondary readiness and graduating are bigger goals with transformation. If each of those went up by 5, that might be a better weight. And if graduation rate went up by the 5, it'd still get you over your 50.
Thank you, Alan. Rosemary, do you have a comment?
Yes, I think it's been a good discussion, and I would agree that high school should be about, are we putting out students that are ready to be adults and be successful in the world? I think the weights, obviously in Kentucky, the legislature has put a lot of emphasis on the reading and math. Now, I'm sure science and social studies will come eventually, but the reality of our schools right now is a focus on reading and math, and they do support those other content areas. When you look at the reading and math, for example, the state assessment of 35, that's given them a rate of 17.5 for each one of those. So it's not horribly over the science and social studies. Now, the growth issue, I think, is kind of a separate issue. I'm for growth in all content areas, but the reality is, again, is that possible to do that? And if we have to emphasize a content area, in my mind, particularly for elementaries, it would be reading and math, and probably also for middle school. But that's just my kind of thinking. I mean, I can live with these. I do agree that the post-secondary is critically important, and that's the end result of what we hope our high schools are doing. So I would be supportive of that.
Thank you, Rosemary. Dr. Stafford, I don't see any other hands, so I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you. This has been a great conversation, exactly the type of feedback that we needed. Jessica, if you'll go to the next slide. Just this next steps for the regulation itself. It's going through the regulatory process. So here we are today with you all, the School Curriculum Assessment Accountability. We'll meet with the local superintendents, and we'll take the same draft regulation into the SCAAC conversation on the 28th, as well as to the Kentucky Board of Education. Now, we'll also, during the presentation to the board, we'll share some of the feedback that we've received today, and that we'll continue to receive from our other advisory councils. We also have in August our Kentucky Technical Advisory Committee meeting. Then we go into the second read. So we'll come back to you, as I mentioned, in September with we'll have another draft of the regulation, have similar conversations that we have today. But again, we'll ask you to have a little bit more formal recommendations other than just feedback. We'll take the same conversation to LSAC in September in the second read with the Kentucky Board of Education. Then we'll move into public comment period, and into November and December with the anticipation that we update the ESSA state plan and have that in submitted by February, and then have an approved accountability system that would then be reported for the 26-27 school year. So the assessment will change, and I think Shara is going to share a little bit about that timeline. So with that, I just want to say thank you to each and every one of you for your comments. Thanks to the commissioner for his leadership and guidance on the development of this. And it's been a team effort across the agency and across our stakeholders. So thank you very much. And as you finish your summer, I just wish you the best as you start your school year.
Thank you, Dr. Stafford. Okay, next up on our agenda, we have Shara Savage with us, the Director of the Division of Assessment and Accountability Support, to provide an assessment and contract update.
Thank you, Carrie. If we could go to the next slide. Yeah, thank you. So good morning, everyone. My name is, as Carrie said, Shara Savage. I'm the Director in the Division of Assessment Accountability Support, and I wanted to bring you some spring assessment updates and a little information about our contracts. So go to the next slide. I'd like to begin by sharing a few testing numbers that highlight the scope of Kentucky's statewide assessment program and the successful testing season that we completed. So for the Kentucky Summative Assessment, KSA, we had 1,582,370 online tests completed. On our busiest day, students completed 171,586 tests. And then moving into for the SAT, Kentucky's state administered college admissions exam for this past spring, 46,491 online tests were completed. And then our Access, our English learner students, those students completed 44,885 online tests. And not showing on your screen is the the alternate Kentucky Summative Assessment, our KSA, AKSA. Those students completed 5,130 paper tests. So and those, remember, those students give the AKSA. The AKSA is given to 1% of those students with the most significant cognitive disabilities. And so together, we feel that these numbers reflect a successful statewide testing season and the coordinated efforts from our students, our teachers, and our districts and state partners across Kentucky. So we are pleased to give you that update. So if we'll go to the next slide, Jessica. So I wanted to provide you a brief update on a couple of contracts and their current status in the procurement process. So next slide, Jessica. Good. So the KSA and the AKSA contracts, they're nearing their end, and therefore Kentucky, here in the Office of Assessment and Accountability, we are currently moving through the state procurement process for the KSA and the AKSA, and the initial internal reviews of the request for proposal, the RFP, are underway to ensure that the requirements are clear and complete and aligned with the state assessment needs. Once those internal reviews are complete, the goal is to release the RFP for competitive bidding soon. And so that vendor could possibly change in the year 2028 and beyond. In addition to the KSA and AKSA procurements, the college admissions exam is also moving through the RFP process. And so just a reminder on that, Senate Bill 197 required KDE to rebid the college admissions exam. So bidding for the college admissions exam closed on June the 27th. And so the goal there is to have a vendor in place by October, allowing sufficient time to prepare for the administration of the exam in the spring. We understand that Kentucky's high schools will begin without a college admissions exam vendor in place, but we hope that the schools districts know that we will work to support the schools as soon as a vendor is in place. So with that, I will pause here and see if there's any thoughts or comments, and if not, then I'll turn it over to the next presenter. Turn it back to Carrie.
I'll add to that, Shara. Thank you. Just a reminder, the Finance Administration Cabinet, as Shara pointed out, they oversee the procurement process. And they are actually moving this through at a much more rapid pace than what they typically move a contract through. So usually these are well over a year, sometimes 18 months or more when you get a contract in place. So as Shara pointed out, being required to go back through this procurement process, we've closed. I'm sorry, the Finance Administration Cabinet has closed the process. It takes a month and a half for the scoring, and then it takes another month, maybe longer, to get a contract in place. So we're hoping, and again, the earliest, if there's no bumps, is we're being told is October. So again, our apologies for that, but since our state government required and our governor didn't veto, we have to go back through that procurement process. And hopefully, and we did make some changes, just so that as far as developing the rubric. We also pulled in the Council on Post-Secondary Education to get their input on what the rubric would look like. We also have a member of our Council of Post-Secondary Education that will help on the scoring. We also have asked for a district assessment coordinator from a district to come in for technical assistance as a part of the scoring. So we're trying to get more input from more stakeholders as we can as we move through in this scoring process. But again, whoever wins the bid, we want what's best for the kids of Kentucky. We are asking for, making sure that whoever wins the bid, that kids are getting resources. We're making sure that our students with accommodations their needs are being met. But again, you can see that rubric online as far as part of that bid if you'd like. So.
Thank you,
Shara.
Commissioner. Do we have any questions for Shara? Okay, Shara, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, the last item on our agenda is our revised social studies standards. I'd like to invite Crystal Rowland, Director, Division of Academic Programming in the Office of Teaching and Learning, and Laura Galicchio, the Assistant Director of Academic Programming, for this presentation.
Thank you and good morning. Thank you for the opportunity to provide an update on our Kentucky Academic Standards work currently underway in the Office of Teaching and Learning. We do have revised social studies standards that will be moving forward for board consideration in August. And so we wanted to share those with this committee and receive your feedback as that's moving forward. Kentucky law requires each set of academic standards to undergo review on a 6-year cycle. As part of that process, KDE facilitates a standards review led by Kentucky educators and stakeholders and presents recommendations and public feedback for consideration before implementation and adoption into law. The revised Kentucky Academic Standards for Social Studies are the result of that required review process and are currently moving through those final stages of statutory approval. The statute further establishes expectations for standards revision. The revisions must support student success, communicate expectations clearly, be grounded in research, and ensure alignment across grade levels. And the advisory panel and review committee used these requirements as guiding principles throughout the revision process. On the screen here, you'll see a graphic that outlines the process that's required in the statute. The Social Studies Standards Review followed this process. It included work by 3 advisory panels representing elementary, middle, and high school, and a review committee, 2 30-day public comment periods, review of stakeholder feedback, legislative reporting to the Interim Joint Committee on Education, and review by the Standards and Assessment Process Review Committee. More than 30 Kentucky classroom teachers, post-secondary representatives, and community members participated directly in this revision process. And our community members that were selected represented the Fraser History Museum, Civic Lex, Kentucky Historical Society, and the Louisville branch of the St. Louis Federal Reserve, as well as our regional educational cooperatives. So an amazing team there supporting our classroom teachers. This team of standards writers was selected based on their expertise in the area of social studies, including those with a specialty in the disciplines of social studies, civics, economics, geography, and history. When choosing writers, the selection committee considered statewide representation for public elementary, middle, and high school teachers, as well as higher education instructors and community members. The activities for the review and revision of the social studies standards are included here. The process began in February of 2025 with an application for teachers to serve on the advisory panels and review committee. Public comment was solicited in March 2025 for the current standards and June 2025 for the draft standards and the assessment blueprint. In June, the public feedback and the draft standards were presented to the Interim Joint Committee on Education. The standards writers design social studies standards that give students real opportunities to question, create, and collaborate as they think about the future. The goal is for students to engage with the social studies disciplinary concepts and practices of civics, economic, geography, and history. Across all grades, the focus is on critical thinking, evaluating sources, and communicating clearly so students are prepared for informed civic participation. The current cast for social studies was open for a public comment for 30 days. We received a total of 390 responses. Feedback was received by a range of stakeholders represented here on the screen. For each standard, respondents were asked to determine keep as is or revise with a prompt to write in their comments regarding revisions. The standards writers responded directly to feedback by improving grade level appropriateness, expanding clarification guidance, and strengthening implementation supports in both the front matter and the grade level overviews. As a result, the standards are clearer, more usable, and better aligned to educator needs. This slide highlights the general revisions to the standards document, including design features to enhance usability, as well as expanded clarification guidance around questioning and updated high school grade band overview. This highlights the organization of the standards around the disciplines of civics, economics, geography, and history to emphasize the importance of teaching the social studies disciplinary strands in unison rather than in isolation. A comprehensive list of changes to the standards will be available in the draft Kentucky Academic Standards for Social Studies at-a-glance document that will be going out as the standards roll out. In the second round of public comment, over 175 responses were received. 94% of standards were accepted as is. This high acceptance rate reflects the intentional work of the standards writers. The standards writers reconvened to review the remaining 6% of standards and provided revisions as needed to complete the draft cast for social studies. On the screen, you can see an example standard for high school civics. In the left column, you see the disciplinary strand followed by the concept and practice title. The middle column includes the standard, which describes what students should know and be able to do. And the right column includes disciplinary clarifications that include ideas and content to help teachers better understand the expectations of the standard. KDE will have a host of resources to support implementation once revised standards are adopted, but we want to share an initiative that will be a significant support for standards implementation. So I'm going to hand off to Lauren Galicchio, Assistant Director, to share more about this support.
Hello, everyone. I am so excited to join you today to announce our new K-8 Social Studies curriculum designed for Kentucky. As KDE prepares to roll out the revised Kentucky Academic Standards for Social Studies, as Crystal just walked you through, we are developing resources to support districts in implementation. One of the most significant supports will be this new optional K-8 Social Studies curriculum called Our Commonwealth, Our Nation, Our World. Our Commonwealth, which is a shorthand title for this curriculum, is designed to provide districts with a high-quality instructional resource that is directly aligned to Kentucky's revised standards and reflects the vision that Crystal went over earlier, established by the standards writers. The title reflects the progression of learning students will experience as they develop understanding of their local communities, Kentucky, the nation, the broader world, while engaging with those social studies disciplines of civics, economics, geography, and history throughout kindergarten through grade 8. As we look at the next slide, we're going to provide some additional information on our Commonwealth. To make this new optional curriculum possible, KDE has partnered with the Core Knowledge Foundation to develop this Kentucky-specific social studies HQIR for K-8. This is not an existing program being repackaged for Kentucky. The curriculum is being developed specifically for Kentucky educators and students and is aligned from the beginning of development to the Kentucky Academic Standards for Social Studies. This partnership combines Core Knowledge Foundation's expertise in knowledge-rich curriculum design with KDE's expertise in Kentucky standards and instructional priorities. The result will be a comprehensive instructional resource that includes texts, instructional tasks, and assessments designed to be rigorous social studies instruction statewide. The curriculum will remain an optional resource, providing districts with access to a social studies HQIR while preserving local decision-making. So as we transition to the next slide, what are some of those curriculum design features? So our Commonwealth is organized around coherent knowledge building across grades K-8, integrating civics, economics, geography, and history while helping students develop increased skills such as questioning, evaluating sources, analyzing evidence, and communicating informed conclusions. This partnership is a direct response to feedback that KDE has consistently heard from districts across Kentucky. Educators have requested high-quality, standards-aligned social studies materials that require less local adaptation and preparation. Rather than adapting materials developed for other states, this curriculum is being built from Kentucky standards and includes Kentucky's history, Kentucky's communities, and Kentucky's vision for social studies instruction. An additional benefit of our Commonwealth is its support for literacy development. Research continues to demonstrate that students become stronger readers when they build knowledge through meaningful content. By engaging students in rich social studies learning, the curriculum also supports vocabulary development, comprehension, and academic language growth. So, what to expect? This slide outlines the timeline and supports districts can expect as our Commonwealth becomes available. The release will occur in phases beginning in the 2027-2028 school year with kindergarten, grade 3, grade 5, and grade 8. The remaining grade levels, grades 1, 2, 4, 6, and 7, will be released during the 2028-29 school year. In each of these releases, all units for each grade level will be released at once. While this project is in the early phases of development, we tentatively anticipate being able to preview one unit for kindergarten, grade 3, grade 5, and grade 8 during the spring of 2027. To support the implementation of this curriculum, KDE will provide comprehensive curriculum-based professional learning. This will include regional in-person training opportunities, live virtual follow-up sessions throughout the school year, and self-paced learning modules available through the KY Learning Hub. Districts will have free digital access to the curriculum materials, while assessments and answer keys will be housed within the KY Learning Hub. Low-cost print options will also be available for districts that prefer printed student materials. As development continues, KDE will provide regular updates and opportunities for educators to learn about the resource before implementation begins. Our goal is to ensure districts have both the materials and the professional learning support necessary to make informed local decisions about adoption and use. Crystal, I'll turn it back over to you to share more about the additional implementation supports that will be available to support the CAS for Social Studies.
Thank you, Lauren. So in addition to our Commonwealth curriculum that's in development currently, we will have our regular suite of resources to help local districts and schools transition to revised standards. That includes an at-a-glance document, which is a comprehensive list of changes in standards, an updated instructional resource consumer guide for social studies, as well as family guides, new resources, an implementation guide for leaders, as well as our curriculum that Lauren just spoke about, a companion glossary, and the digital CAS for social studies. So that will be a digital version of the CAS that can be used within PLCs and to support teachers as they are implementing standards. We'll also have professional learning resources. Our Getting to Know the CAS for Social Studies will be provided as a school-based module on kystandards.org. That will have the facilitator's guide and all the resources for you to implement locally in person, and also a Kentucky Learning Hub course that can be completed asynchronously at your own pace. A few other things to note on updates around content standards. Several recently adopted standards will enter classroom implementation during the 2026-27 school year, including reading and writing, health education, physical education, and career studies and financial literacy. KDE continues to provide implementation resources and professional learning to support districts as these standards take effect. You can find those on kystandards.org. Looking ahead, KDE remains on schedule with the Kentucky Standards Review Cycle. Social Studies and Math are currently under review, and our Office of Educational Technology is leading reviews of computer science, technology, and library media standards. And we anticipate bringing the proposed social studies standards to the board in August and mathematics later this year. With the reading and writing standards taking effect this year, we have developed a comprehensive set of implementation supports for those standards. These include classroom resources, family supports, implementation guidance, and multiple professional learning opportunities. The goal is to ensure districts have access not only to the standards themselves, but to the practical tools to support successful implementation. And these resources and more are available on kystandards.org under the Reading and Writing Resources tab. While you're there, you may want to subscribe to our standards newsletter to get updates on what's happening with standards, as well as opportunities and resources as they become available. Our World Languages Standards Review will begin in the fall of this year. And so if you want to be apprised of what's happening with that, the standards newsletter is a great place to find out. And we'll pause, and if you have any questions or comments for us, well, we're glad to answer those.
Are there any questions about the social studies standards? Okay, Superintendent Tuck.
I don't have a question. I just want to commend KDE for doing this for districts. This is going to be, I think, well received. It will be well received from our district. So I think that's awesome. And I would be, I guess, curious to see if this might be something with this, if this is successful, would this be something that we might try to do with science as well?
Appreciate hearing that. We have heard from districts across the state of needing these resources, and so we're excited to be able to partner with Core Knowledge so that we are providing a curriculum that is aligned and also of high quality. So I appreciate that.
I'll second Superintendent Tuck's comment. This is a much needed resource. We've needed this for many, many years. So thank you for the work that you've put into creating this and to supporting our districts.
Thank you.
Okay, are there any other comments or questions? We've had a really great meeting, a lot of robust discussion on some very important topics. So thank you all for joining us today and helping to contribute and to shape the future of what our education in Kentucky is going to look like. So appreciate everyone's participation. We do have some upcoming meeting dates that we want to make sure is on your calendar. We will be following up for our next SCAAC meeting on September 15th. So please make sure that you have that on your calendar. And I know that we will also have that, you'll receive that update in email. Any other comments before we adjourn? Commissioner, anything you would like to say before we adjourn?
Yes, thank you so much, Chair Ballinger. I want to thank everyone for the input today. It was a great conversation. Of course, we're listening to all of our groups, and to get to this point, the suggestions that we've had, I hope that you've seen the suggestions that you've made all the way to this point in the presentation today. But thank you so much for all the input. Thank you so much for your time, and we really appreciate it. And as always, thank you for being all in.
Thank you, Commissioner. With that, I do need a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn, Rosie Young.
Okay, we have a motion to adjourn. Is there a second on that motion?
Leslie Jeffries, I'll second.
Second by Leslie Jeffries. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Okay, everyone have a great rest of your afternoon, and thank you for joining.